Jacksonville Jaguars fans, welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLuca. Thanks so much for tuning in here Monday, May 12th. Second show of the day for y'all. Obviously, Jaguars had rookie minicamp this past weekend. It was a lot of fun being out there, seeing the energy that the fans had for Travis Hunter, the energy that Travis Hunter provided to the fans and the rest of the team out there was pretty cool. And it's going to be awesome to see how it all plays out with the rest of the team, you know, the veterans getting out there and joining in on the fun. But right now, I kind of wanted to take a look as we're 3 days away, a couple days away from the schedule release, which I believe is actually going to be on my birthday, May 15th. What is the Jaguars ceiling in 2025? That's kind of what I wanted to think about here today, what I've been pondering. And I think that their ceiling is legitimately higher than it has been in a while. Obviously, there's coaching that has to do with that. There's the talent that has to do with that as well. But to me, just to not bury the lead or anything, I do think the Jaguars can win the AFC South. And this is not my projection. I'm not predicting this stuff right now. I'm saying from a ceiling standpoint, looking at what is the best possible outcome for the Jaguars in 2025. Obviously, every team would hope it would be a Super Bowl victory. But like from a realistic standpoint, evaluating this roster, evaluating the bets they made, if most of those bets hit, what can their ceiling be? To me, it's probably an AFC South crown and like a divisional round appearance, conference championship, maybe if they get lucky with matchups or they get a home game for the divisional round somehow. That feels a little unlikely to me, but I think that very realistically in the realm of possibilities, if the Jaguars kind of hit their ceiling going to the divisional round after winning the AFC South, to me does not feel at all like it's out of the realm of possibilities, like there's a 0% chance that happens. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And we're going to dive into like what it's going to take to get there. And could they even possibly get further than that? Again, living through this time in the AFC where you have Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, you have Josh Allen and the Bills, you have Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, Joe Burrow, the AFC West in general, looking at that division to go along with the Chiefs is going to be incredibly difficult, right? The Broncos, Chargers, Raiders are all primed to be competitive football teams. You can't forget about the Dolphins. They went out and they tried to get a lot tougher, a lot bigger and meaner and more physical. Will that work out for them? There's a lot that you have to overcome in the AFC to get past a divisional round. And that feels like it's going to be a tough needle to thread, really, when you look at the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Ravens, in my opinion. So that's why I have them at the divisional round. Again, if they got lucky with matchups, if they got a home game in the divisional round, could they possibly win that game? Yes, maybe. But we're going to dive into what it's going to take for them to hit that ceiling. And again, most of the bets they made have to hit, especially the big ones. And so we'll look at that. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content here, please like and subscribe. So the biggest bet they made was obviously the Travis Hunter bet. Trading up to get him at 2 overall, coming in playing wide receiver and corner. He has to make a positive impact on both sides. And really saying positive impact is probably selling it a little bit short. Like he has to be dynamic on both sides for this team to reach their ceiling. And if he can be that, I mean, who knows? Because there is a level of talent at the top of this roster where if those players play to their ceiling, it could be one of the tougher outs at the end of the year. That is possible, right? But a lot of the bets the Jaguars' new regime made this year, outside of like the Travis Hunter bet and some of the other draft guys they brought in, a lot of the free agency stuff was really about raising the floor, right? So one of those floor-raising moves that needs to hit to me was like Eric Murray, signing Eric Murray to be a starting safety for you. That's got to hit. And I think throughout his career, you've seen some ups, some downs. I don't think you've really ever seen him play at an elite level. I don't think you've ever seen him play at like an extremely poor level either. Can he be a steady, like net neutral for you at safety? I think if he can be that, and as well with Caleb Ransaw coming in as your third round pick there at 88 overall, if those two guys can be neutral for you, you can be in a pretty good spot, I think, on the back end of that defense with Tyson Campbell, with Travis Hunter, Jordan Lewis, Jarian Jones, in that secondary, along with those two guys. But the safety bets, they got to hit, because, I mean, I don't think you're relying on Darnell Savage or Andrew Wingard or Antonio Johnson, Daniel Thomas. I don't think you're relying on these guys to play safety for you. I think that they really want it to be Murray and Ransaw. And those guys need to be able to play well enough for that to work out. Interior offensive line bets, they need to hit. They went and got Patrick McCary, paid him over $13 million. They brought in Robert Hainsey to be a starter. They drafted with their other third-round pick, Wyatt Milam. Obviously, Ezra Cleveland's still there. Jonah Monheim comes in as a depth player. Those interior offensive line bets need to, and the depth. They signed a bunch of backups this offseason as well, a few of them. When you look at Chuma Edoga and Fred Johnson, also, again, Jonah Monheim, brought back Cole Van Lannon. So those offensive line bets, they got to be right. And I hope they are. I hope they are. But I think that's going to be a big part of it. Because if you can't protect Trevor Lawrence on the interior, if you can't get better push and run blocking up front, it's gonna be more difficult than it needs to be, right? And speaking of Trevor Lawrence, right, he has to play to his potential and he has to stay healthy. And I've seen folks talk about, well, he's just not capable of greatness. He hasn't lived up to his potential, all these things. I mean, you have seen the ceiling, or you've seen a level of that ceiling, right? Like maybe he can be what you saw at the end of 2022 more consistently. Maybe he can cut out a little bits and pieces of the mistakes and elevate his overall game from that. But what he was at the end of 2022, when he went on an unbelievable heater with a subpar group around him, and the Jaguars won like 6 out of 7 games. They had an epic comeback in the playoffs. And then he went to Kansas City and he played good football against a really good Chiefs team, right? One of the dynasties that we've seen in this sport, the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, that's what you need, that confidence level Trevor Lawrence, that execution level Trevor Lawrence. And then 2023, like before he got injured against the Bengals in week 13 in 2023, he played great football. And basically at the end of both 2023 and 2024, he was playing through injuries he probably should not have been playing through. And so the other thing is not only play to his potential, but keep him healthy. And that's going to be on him. That's going to be on the coaches. That's going to be on the offensive line and everybody out there that has to block for him and get open for him, right? Like that's on everyone. But he can't be taking shots the way he took that shot to his shoulder against the Eagles. Now, what happened against the Texans, that was obviously egregious and should not be a part of the game, the hit that he received to the head from Azeez Al-Shaair. And I don't blame him at all for that. But, you know, the shoulder injury he was dealing with, I think that he could have avoided that. And so he's got to be better. His offensive line's got to be better. But to say that Trevor Lawrence like doesn't have the ability to play at a top 5 level, we've seen him do it. We saw him do it in 2022 and we saw him do it in 2023 before he got hurt. So, and again, this is not my projection for the season. This is my discussion of the ceiling. Don't get that twisted. I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence is going to play the best football of his life this year. I'm not saying he won't, but I'm just saying like that's what has to happen for the Jaguars to be the best they can be. And to get that out of Trevor Lawrence, Liam Cohen, the Jaguars head coach and offensive designer, offensive play caller, Liam Cohen along with Grant Udinski and Spencer Whipple and the rest of these guys, they have to get the most out of the offense, improve this group, the ground game, improve the essentially the skeleton, the spine of the passing game, right? Like the entire procedure of the passing game, the entire inner workings, how the drop back game works, how Trevor Lawrence, and they talked about this, how Trevor Lawrence's feet, his footwork need to align with the reads, the progressions. All of it has to come together in a much more consistent way. You have to be better in the red zone. You have to be better in short yardage. That's all the stuff on offense. Defensively, again, we talked about those safety pieces needing to really come together and do it. We talked about Travis Hunter needing to be a positive impact on the secondary. Anthony Campanile, the Jaguars defensive coordinator, as much as I like him, I'm rooting for him, I'm excited. He needs to prove that he can not only be a good defensive coordinator who is good with his bread and butter stuff, but also somebody who can be a game plan defensive coordinator later in the year, a defensive coordinator that can, and along with his staff, can study the opponent, figure out how can we take advantage of some matchups, or how can we deny them what they do best? How can we best take advantage of this situation in front of us, and not only figure it out, but then be able to teach that information to the defensive players, the personnel, and get them to be able to execute it sometimes on a short week. Sometimes, you have a week to get a completely different game plan than you ran the week prior, right? So there's a lot of different things that go into this thing. But Anthony Campanile, again, seems like an awesome guy. Seems like fun to be around. He has to prove that he can do this in the NFL from a coordinator standpoint. So all those things kind of got to come together. Ultimately, the biggest things that have to come together is Liam Cohen running a tight ship and Trevor Lawrence playing to his peak and staying healthy, or playing close to his peak and staying healthy, and Travis Hunter getting it done. And if those things happen, they've got a good chance to, I think, win their division. I think, with a third place schedule, that's helpful. With a division where you look at the opponents, and I think on paper you say they're clearly better than the Colts and the Titans. Yes, the Titans have taken steps in the right direction, I think, but you still got a rookie quarterback, a head coach who has yet to prove himself, and question marks at certain spots, shall we say. The Colts, you have no idea what's going on at quarterback, and that's a major issue. So that, to me, leaves the Jags and the Texans, who are probably going to be duking out at the top of the division. And I think the Texans have immense offensive line issues. Immense. Cam Robinson's out there week 1 for the majority of the season. If he's not, you've got a rookie Ariante Ursary. I don't like any of the moves they made on their offensive line. So yeah, I could see the Jaguars potentially beating them and being better than them. And Josh Hines Allen and Trayvon Walker and Eric Armstead and Mason Smith getting after it against that group, I could definitely see that. I still just can't really see that. I think, winning a wild card game, I can see it. Getting to that AFC championship sounds tough in this environment in the AFC. Threading the needle of winning the AFC championship game just sounds almost impossible in a conference with the teams we talked about, even if things basically go perfect, because those teams just have more experience at the top of the conference. I think you have more been there, done that to it at the top, and you just have elite quarterback play. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Could the Jags get there? Yeah. I think it's more likely to expect a huge season in 2026, because they'll have a year under their belt where They've seen what works with this group. They've seen what hasn't. They've seen what their deficiencies are after they've undergone a massive rebuild, despite what people might say. And yeah, a lot of the top talent is still in place as it should be because those are foundational guys that you believe in. Trevor Lawrence, Brian Thomas Jr. You can believe in the tackles. I think offensive tackles. Josh Hines Allen, obviously, Trayvon Walker, Eric Armstead, Foye Luke, and Tyson Campbell. But other than that, you've seen a ton of turnover. And the Jaguars can figure out what their bread and butter is, what works, what doesn't. And they can have the cap flexibility and maneuverability and the draft capital, even though they don't have a first round pick. They've got a lot of picks on day 2 and day 3 next year that they can utilize to potentially put together a roster that maybe has a higher ceiling than the current roster. I think how could you have a higher ceiling than the current roster? Again, interior offensive line, safety next to Caleb Ransaw. I believe in Eric Armstead and Mason Smith. I believe in their ceiling. But to me, it's probably interior offensive line. Maybe you could have a higher ceiling at running back too. But I think they've put together a good group. It's just about everything coming together in year 1. And I think you have to probably go through a shared experience of a full season together here in 2025 before you could really sit here and legitimately predict that they end up being one of the top 3 teams in the AFC or top 2 teams in the AFC. I think that's just a little bit of a reach right now. Of course, anything is possible once you get in the tournament. And so that's going to be the goal, to get into the playoffs and then put your best foot forward there. One thing that we always gloss over, special teams. I do think that the stability they have with their special teams is massive, not only with Heath Farwell sticking around, but you have 3, all-pro caliber players coming back with your specialists, Ross Matisic, Logan Cook, and the rookie from last year, Cam Little at kicker. All those guys are tremendous talents. And then you have tons of talent returning on special teams from a coverage standpoint and all that stuff. But then you also added Jack Kaiser, who's a core 4 special teamer, Rayon Lane, who's the best gunner in the draft, a lot of guys who can get it done in that regard. So that's something that people don't talk about special teams much. But the Jaguars should have a special teams unit that helps them win games in 2025. That's something to keep in mind. Again, this is just the talk about the ceiling. And I think the ceiling is most likely probably a divisional round appearance and an AFC South championship. I have a hard time getting on board with really saying that they'll do more than that. But what's exciting is we'll get the schedule release, and then you can really start to kind of dive into, okay, what stretches of the year could potentially be beneficial, what stretches are going to be very difficult to maneuver and to manage, and you can get into all that stuff. And we'll do a record prediction as soon as we get that schedule, obviously, and that'll be a lot of fun. And we'll also talk about the floor. We will talk about what the Jaguars' floor is here in 2025. Probably do that tomorrow. Ceiling today, floor tomorrow. That's how we'll do it. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. Have a good one.